All right. Knowles,
Hey there.
nice jacket.
Oh, this whole thing? I try to put on my Sunday best for this hit on the show. My Monday morning best.
It looks good. So let's talk about what happened in Australia, because I've been laughing ever since. I don't know if you read the New York Times article about it.
Oh, yes. Oh, you mean the New York Times article, which described this conservative victory as... The Conservative Party there is the Liberal National Coalition.
But let's set it up. Let's tell people what happened in Australia.
Okay, all right. Then we'll get to this. New York Times turned up all the way to 11.
It was like eating cake.
A specter is haunting Australia.
Yeah.
The specter of conservatism. So shock election results. All the experts were wrong. All the pundits were wrong. All the polls were wrong.
They knew he was going to lose.
They knew that the conservative, Scott Morrison.
That's never happened in the polls before, right?
It's so strange. I thought the polls were right. But it turns out sometimes the polls are very wrong. Shock.
I can't think of when that's ever happened.
It's a shock to everybody except for the real people who voted for him. But it's a shock to the
Okay, so he was going to be thrown out because...
So he's supposed to lose. This conservative guy is supposed to lose to the left-wing Labour Party because of the big issue in the campaign was going to be global warming. Global warming. It was climate. This was the climate change referendum versus this nincompoop, this retrograde Scott Morrison, an evangelical Christian, by the way, who this fool decided to run on the economy. So you've got the economy versus the sun monster, and guess what happened? The economy won.
This is why I love the Times headline it was supposed to be the global warming election. What happened? And I thought they realized that was crap.
And they can't take responsibility for it. So what the New York Times does, they write, he and his Liberal National Coalition won thanks not just to their base of older suburban economic conservatives.
I hate those guys.
They're the worst. But also to a surge of support in Queensland, the rural, coal-producing, sparsely populated state, sometimes compared to the American South.
Oh, man. They're like, what deplorable. They're deplorable. They're deplorable.
They're sometimes compared to the American South by the New York Times. And they're not making
It just happened. You can tell.
So they were certain this was going to be the Green New Deal election. I mean, this is why this matters for the United States. Is foreign politics don't always line up with ours. This election really did. You had conservatives running on a great economy. Australia has had a growing economy now for something like 29 years.
That's right. It's the longest boom in history.
Ever in the history of the world. And the left decided to run on the Green New Deal because they couldn't run on anything else. So they ran on this fantasy of the world ending in 12 years, and they lost. And this isn't just happening on Australia. You're seeing this sort of conservative revolution, I suppose, in Britain, and you've seen it in the United States.
It's a revolution, not just between the left and the right. It's a revolution between the people. And this kind of like crust of administrative elites. I mean,
and I think it's. I mean, you could draw any number of dichotomies. I think it's a revolution from reality versus fantasy, and I think some of it is.
Well, reality does do that.
And reality does reassert itself over time. This is the great conservative consolation. Is reality does reassert itself, but it's a revolution from those people who kind of like where they are. They kind of like their neighbors. They like themselves. They like their country. They don't want it all to be washed away. And between these other people who want to get rid of all of history, all of these local affections, in favor of some universal utopian scheme.
You know, for saying that, anywhere else but this show, you would be called a racist.
A bigot.
A bigot and all this stuff. But one of the things that gets me about the left, and I was just playing like Bernie and all these people, and Pete Buttigieg and all, they never talk about where the money comes from. So Pete Buttigieg says we need to say where the money's going to come from. We're going to tax this guy and tax that guy and tax. But that's not the answer to where the money comes from, because the money comes from that guy and this guy and that guy. When you take away his incentives, he's not going to create that money. He's not going to create that wealth, or he's not going to hang around and wait for you to take it away from him. They never ask this. They never, there was a cut of Bernie Sanders saying the nation can pay its baseball players $1 million. Why can't we have health care? The nation doesn't pay our baseball players.
I pay him, I guess, about $40 every time I go to the stadium.
But they never think about this. They never think about where the money comes from, where everything comes from. It comes from Thomas Jefferson. He had his flaws, you know. We don't, but he did, you know. I mean, but I mean, they never think about the fact that when you say people like where they are, and they like their country, and they like their neighbors and all this stuff, that came from somewhere. And not, you know, it wasn't pretty all the time. People made mistakes, but it comes from somewhere. And we should have a loyalty to that.
And it's tangible. It's real versus this beautiful utopian scheme.
Yeah.
Pete Buttigieg, he's so much better than Thomas Jefferson. He says we need to take Jefferson's name off of these Jefferson dinners because Jefferson held slaves, and he's not nearly as good a person as Pete Buttigieg.
Who doesn't hold slaves.
He doesn't hold slaves. And the reality that we live in our particular places is never as good as the utopian scheme that these guys are selling us. And so you see this in the UK elections as well. Right now, you've got the Tories in the UK and you've got Labour. You've got Theresa May running the Conservatives, and you've got Jeremy Corbyn running the leftists, the Labour Party. And then you have Nigel Farage, whose entire political career is saying that Britain needs to leave the European Union. He had the UK Independence Party, now he has the Brexit Party. And again, the experts are shocked because the Brexit Party is surging in the European elections. They are surging. This could cause Theresa May to be ousted. Right now, the Brexit Party says they have 1,300 would-be candidates who are pledging to stand in the next general election in the UK, which will happen in 2022. Why is this? Because there is a campaign right now in the United Kingdom to undo Brexit. They voted on Brexit 3 years ago. And there is a Soros-funded campaign to have another referendum because the people deserve a say.
Because, I mean, England is like the size of Oregon. That's how big England is. And it has dominated the world. Its culture still dominates the world. Its culture travels through us into the world. Why shouldn't they be building on their successes? Why should they be beating themselves up all the time?
Exactly. Yeah. And so there is some worry now that this Brexit Party is going to upset the Conservatives and it's going to give the left a victory. There's no evidence of that. The bookies are giving 3-to-1 odds that the Tory, Boris Johnson, will be the next prime minister after Theresa May. Yeah.
Really? Okay. He's not that solid on Brexit.
Well, it's unclear. I mean, he voted against this awful Brexit deal that Theresa May had twice.
That was awful, though, yeah.
Then he voted for it one time. He's a little squishy. He's a little bit of a politician. I think Nigel Farage right now is trying to leverage Brexit to make him a little firmer on the issue. Jeremy Corbyn, though, the leftist, he's fallen way down in the odds here. And what it gets to, there was this great article by Roger Kimball in American Greatness.
I saw that. Great article.
This article, it describes, because I think we're struggling in our vocabulary to describe what's going on.
Yes.
What the left wants to do is portray there are the forces of progress and tolerance against the awful neo-Nazi white nationalists.
Meanwhile, they're taking us back to racism, segregation, abortion. Like they want progress to where we can kill babies in the third trimester.
Eugenics,
that actually is not progress. Yeah.
Exactly. You've got that view of it, and then I think the right-wing view of it is they're trying to force this moment into a traditional paradigm. This is the regular, normal conservatives versus the regular, normal liberals.
Right.
It isn't quite that. No. Roger Kimball makes this great argument. He says, what we're looking at now is a great realignment in politics, and it's based on two different views of liberty. So he writes that there is one view, quote, the parochial view that affirms tradition, local affection, and the subordination of politics to the ordinary business of life, versus the other view, the abstract view, that seeks nothing less than to boost us all up to that plane of enlightenment from which all self-interested actions look petty, if not criminal, and through which mankind as a whole, but alas, not individual men, may hope for whatever salvation secularism leavened by utilitarianism may provide.
Wow, wow.
I think that sums it up.
You know, yesterday in church, in my church, they have the greatest liturgy and the sermons, not so much.
A little weak.
And the guy gave a sermon about Peter having a dream where he realized that no meal was restricted, no food was restricted. So the kosher laws were basically being set aside in the new Christian world, right? And the priest gave this sermon saying how wonderful that Peter had broken out of the legalistic Jewish thought to come to basically where we are, where we can eat whatever we please and enjoy. And I thought, that's not what happened. That's not what happened. What happened was God re-entered the world through the Jews. They were the only way that happened, and God now is spreading that gift to the rest of the world. It wasn't that Peter was catching up with us. He was creating us, right. And this is the thing, like this, to look back on the world and say, how foolish they were that they didn't do the things that we do. No, they were creating us, and everything we have comes from them, and to just abandon these affections, this idea of life that they gave us is insane.
Well, we've talked about this a lot on the Backstage show,
Yeah.
that what the graceless society looks like, a society where you don't like anybody and you don't give anybody the benefit of the doubt or a little forgiveness or a little bit of grace. And there's this view, I think, on the left, and even some of the rationalists on the right, who say there's a law for everything. There's a government reform for everything. That's how we'll move into the future. And I think politics is much more basic than that. I think it gets down to love, affection, gratitude, veneration, and sin, the sense of sin.
Yeah.
That, listen, maybe I'll be a little reluctant to condemn Thomas Jefferson, a far greater man than I am, because maybe I'm not so great. Maybe Pete Buttigieg isn't so great. And I think so much of the left's agenda, especially in the institutions, especially in education, is to get us to stop liking our country, to stop liking our history, to stop learning our history. And what you're seeing now is, in a very early way, that affection reasserting itself. These voters in Australia saying, I kind of like this economy.
Yeah.
I kind of like having a job. I like the way that we look. I like the way that the country looks. I don't want to totally redo every house, every building.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's racist to say that, like, we are Australians. I mean, I think in America we have a tradition of being multicultural. But when I lived in England, and I would hear them say, "We're a multicultural country," and I think, since when?
Well, right. Yeah, I guess literally in that way, the way that we look in Australia or in the United Kingdom. That's right. Here, it's a little different. I mean, because it's not a racial thing.
But even here, you have to ascribe to the ideas. Like the idea of the left is like, you don't even have to ascribe to that. How dare you insult a Muslim person who wants to have Sharia law? You know. Being American looks a certain way here too. It's not a racial look, right?
But it's the difference between an Hispanic guy waving an American flag or a Hispanic guy at a La Raza meeting waving a Mexican flag.
That's a good point. What are you talking about on the show?
Today we're going to be talking about whether Joe Biden has just ended the 2020 race already. He's up 30 points in the polls. He's up 10 points over Trump in battleground states. But I think he's weak.
Yeah, I do too. I think he's done. All right, great to talk to you.
Good to see you.
Thanks very much.